Well, you look at the car and it looks a lot better. You see that the grille is essentially gone. It's an electric grille. This really grabs a lot of eyeballs on the streets. And of course, this is where the charging happens. So over here, you actually pop this open and voila, it begins to charge. You walk about, and then of course, there are several ways to charge this car. You can obviously go to one of the charging stations and put on a 25 kilowatt hour battery. Well, I don't know why this has to be put out there, plastered across, but yes, electric it is. And that's, well, no surprise. You walk around to the back of the car and you pop it open. And another way to charge the car is obviously this, right? This is what you can plug in to your wall socket, but this is going to take you maybe 18 hours to charge. So maybe it's not the best way to charge your EV. You can always go to a charging station. 50 kilowatt hours would be 0 to 80 maybe in an hour. If you actually go maybe to a 25 kilowatt hour station, then that one would take maybe, well, a couple of hours to charge. And I think those are good options. If you have the wall sockets at home that MG actually puts, that could take you around 8 to 9 hours. And then there's the MG van, which you can call out to, which I think is a really cool innovation. They'll actually come down and give you enough juice to get to the next charging station. So yes, when you're talking about range, well, the company claims this car can actually give you 461 kilometers on a single charge. Now, if that was the case, it would be ideal. But in the real world, I think that translates into a lot lesser. It also depends on how you drive. Are you really, well, flooring the gas pedal? Are you driving in eco mode? How much AC are you using? A lot of those things, right? So if you're driving maybe, well, in normal city conditions, let's put it this way, maybe you can get around 30 to 40 kilometers more than the previous MG ZS EV. And I think that's great, right? That means you can actually, well, maybe charge a few times lesser. And I think that is a great improvement. And that's exactly how EVs will be adopted a lot more as a technology as we see a lot more infrastructure coming in and as these guys keep getting better on the inside. Well, the minute you set foot in the car, strap your seatbelt on and press the brake and apparently switch it on. The thing is, you're not sure if it's on because it's an EV. You're greeted by the car in a minute, and the first thing that you lay your eyes on is this digital cluster, which is really cool, and then this massive touchscreen where you can house all the controls of the car. But they've also given you these hard buttons over here. So you have the home screen, which you can click, and then you get to the weather, the EV battery status, and you also have the artificial intelligence taking over. For instance, you can just tell the assistant,
I'm listening,
to open sunroof. But then again, if this is not the ideal weather, the summer might not be the best weather, and then the monsoons to actually open the sunroof, you can just tell her, close sunroof. And then there's nearly 100 such connected features, which make the car a lot of fun for all of us tech geeks. And largely, well, the car understands it. There's one little difference between the Aster and this one, which is that robot which is placed here on the dashboard in the Aster, which I was hoping would be there in this new version of the ZS EV. It's not there. Maybe it takes up too much power. Maybe it's unnecessary, but it was kind of cool and kind of creepy for some people who thought that the eye was always tracking them. But I was really hoping to be talking to that bot. 75 plus more, maybe 100 connected such features that you can actually make the car do. And that's why it's all about AI and internet inside, though we'd love it if that wasn't mentioned on the outside of the car. But we're not nitpicking because the car on the inside looks fantastic. There's a lot of soft touch wherever you want to touch it. Some great use of carbon fiber, red stitching, very premium to feel, very premium to look at. You look out here at the gear system and it's fantastic, a very tactile rotating dial which makes it look very premium. And then these three buttons, of course, there's mode, which has eco, then there's normal if you flick it up, and then you flick it further up is sport. Then there's curves, right? This button right here, which has 3 levels, 1, 2, 3. It's tech geek paradise if I was to actually elaborate on what it means, but that's this car's kinetic energy recovery system, or how this car uses regenerative braking, and that is all out here on this digital cluster. You can actually find out what the voltage is like, what the current's like, how much power has been used, how much power is being regenerated on deceleration, what the motor speed is like, and I think that does a fantastic job. Also over here, you have, of course, what the average is like. Kitna deti hai can be answered in an EV. For example, it's saying around 5 kilometers per kilowatt hour because we're measuring things in kilowatt hour as soon as you're in an EV. More importantly, what I really like about this car, I'm going to put it in park whilst I tell you that, is how they've got these very small nifty features. For instance, there's this blind spot detection mode. So every time we're driving, you look at the blind spot detection, symbol out there, which essentially tells you don't change lanes or don't turn too fast to the left or to the right because a car is in your blind spot or a vehicle is there and you might meet with some sort of accident. And that is fantastic. It's really helpful in Mumbai traffic and all over India. I'm sure it's a similar story. So hats off to MG for actually coming up with very cool tech features which make your life a whole lot easier. When you get behind the wheel of this EV, that's when you realize that this is quite a delight to drive. It takes breakers well, it's got a very soft suspension. You sit in this commanding position where you feel like you're sitting in an SUV where maybe you're not, but everyone's looking at you anyways because it looks really interesting from the outside, especially with that electric grille. And of course, the charging port in the front, this red color really grabs eyeballs. And most importantly, when you're looking at all these modes, I know I showed you this eco, sport and normal, but frankly, if you're in normal, you're good to go for a city drive. You can save out on some range, you get a decent AC performance, the features that really take power seem to work well. So if you're really driving this in the city, it's fantastic in normal mode. Eco is a little bit tough because when you actually get into eco mode, the car, throttles a little bit. Then of course, the AC isn't as effective. It's suddenly a little hotter in the cabin. Maybe on a winter night when the panoramic sunroof is completely, pulled back, then it might be a good option to be in eco and save some range. You save around 15 to 20 kilometers when you do that. You also save 15 to 20 kilometers the minute you switch off the AC. So yes, if you're in the summer using this, try not to use it in sport mode. Well, let's talk about charging because this is where the charging port's at. And a lot of people are unhappy with the placement, especially given how we drive in India, and maybe people prefer this to be a little closer to, a typical petrol or diesel car. But I kind of like it over here. It's moved away. It's not necessarily the MG symbol because clearly there's a camera down over there. But when you're actually charging is when you ask yourself the existential question, shall I buy an EV? Which we're going to come to you in a minute and actually ask that question. But if you want to buy an EV, this is an experience which you should be prepared for. I'll just put it this way. It comes down to a personality type at this point in 2022. If you want to buy an EV, you need to be patient, well organized, and do your research and really, think on your feet, because we've gone to several charging stations in Mumbai which show up on the Tata Power app. Some of them don't seem to work. Some of them are at gas stations where attendants don't know anything about that. It's self-service. Most people don't know how to use them. There's no real explainer videos explaining how it really works. And there are timings which show on the app, but then clearly those chargers are not really complying with those timings. They're not really available during those timings. It's a hit and miss sort of a user experience, at least here in Mumbai. We've seen that on Tech Today, even in Delhi. So that needs to get better. But if you have your preferred charging station, you're driving this in the city and you know exactly what your route is like, what you're going to traverse on a daily basis, then the MG ZS EV is perhaps one of the best in a league of its own.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.